Hey, fellow superhero cinephiles. Did you know that almost 30% of adults say they haven't read a book in the past year? The primary reason why is a lack of time. Well, Audible's here to help with the gift of found time. Thanks to Audible, you can listen to audiobooks like Marvel Comics, The Untold Story, or Slugfest, inside the epic 50-year battle between Marvel and DC. Read up on the history of superheroes in comics and movies with Grant Morrison's Super Gods. You can also check out Vanguard, my original superhero novel series, or try The Vril Agenda or The Adventures of Fortune McCall, both of which were written by our dearly departed host emeritus, Derek Ferguson. Whatever you're looking for, Audible has thousands of titles that you can consume while commuting, exercising, cooking, or just relaxing at home. And not only audiobooks, an Audible membership also gives you access to tons of content like podcasts, theatrical performances, and exclusive Audible originals that you won't find anywhere else. To give you a taste of what you can get, Audible has partnered with this show to provide listeners with a free 30-day trial. All you have to do is go to audibletrial.com/supercinemapod, and with your free trial, you get one free audiobook and 2 free Audible originals. In fact, you get to keep those titles even if you cancel before the trial is over. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to audibletrial.com/supercinemapod and start your free trial today.
That list of names. People you've wronged as the Winter Soldier.
Don't push it. I've seen that book. It was Steve's when he came out of the ice. I told him about Trouble Man. He wrote it in that book. Did you hear it? What'd you think?
I like 40s music, so...
You didn't like it?
I liked it.
It is a masterpiece, James. Complete. Comprehensive. It captures the African-American experience.
He's out of line, but he's right. It's great. Everybody loves Marvin Gaye.
I like Marvin Gaye.
Steve adored Marvin Gaye.
You must have really looked up to Steve, huh? But I realized something when I met him. The danger with people like him, America's super soldiers, is that we put them on pedestals.
Watch your steps, Zemo.
They become symbols, icons, and then we start to forget about their flaws. From there, cities fly, innocent people die, movements are formed, wars are fought. You remember that, right? As a young soldier sent to Germany to stop a mad icon. Do we want to live in a world full of people like the Red Skull? That is why we're going to Madripoor.
What's up with Madripoor? You guys talk about it like it's Skull Island.
It's an island nation in the Indonesian archipelago. It's a pirate sanctuary back in the 1800s.
It's kept its lawless ways, but we cannot exactly walk in as ourselves. James, you will have to become someone you claim is gone.
Welcome to the Superhero Cinephiles Podcast. I'm your host, Perry Constantine. And when Derek was still with us, we had a tradition that we had done 2 years in a row where every February we'd spotlight Black superheroes. And one of the things we ended up finding out the second year we did this is that there actually aren't a whole lot of Black superhero movies. So we started to, that's how we ended up with Steel. And since Derek's no longer with us, I wanted to do something to kind of continue the tradition. And I thought I'd bring on another one of my favorite Black nerds who's been on the show before, and that's Kelen Conley. Kel, how are you doing today?
I'm great, Perry. It's good to be back, man. It's always good to sit in the seat that Derek used to occupy. So I'm happy to be here, and I'm ready to talk about a Black superhero.
Yeah. So my idea was, I was thinking like, because I had already scheduled a bunch of interviews, and I had actually had 2 more episodes scheduled to record before I actually started talking to you. And I'm like, wait, I should really do something for February. I'm like, I don't want people to think that I'm just like, as soon as Derek's gone, I'm just not going to do it anymore. Then I thought about, asking you to come on, and I thought, well, Falcon and Winter Soldier would probably be a pretty good thing to talk about.
Yeah, it's a very good thing to talk about. And honestly, I haven't talked about it on any podcast. So I'm very excited to talk about it, honestly, today.
Yeah, we had Derek and I had mentioned a few times because it just started airing right before he passed. I'm not even sure if he had actually managed to see the whole thing, but I know he saw at least the first 2 episodes or so.
Mm-hmm. They're very good episodes.
Very good episodes, yeah. And so let's jump right into it. What were some of your in this first episode? We're going to talk about the first 3 episodes. So that's New World Order, The Star Spangled Man, and Power Broker. And then the next episode we'll talk about the last 3. So let's focusing just on these first episodes. What were kind of things you were thinking about when it aired, when you first saw it?
Well, when they first announced it, I am all the way in on the MCU. Like they can mostly do no wrong. I still got to watch Eternals to give you a true opinion on that one. I got to rewatch it, but they've mostly never done wrong for me. So I was excited. I always liked the small moments that we got between Bucky and Falcon in the movies. So I thought that expanding upon that, especially with the events of Endgame and everything, and with essentially Cap passing the shield to Sam at the end of everything, I was eager to see exactly how that would play out. I know we're going to talk about it later, but I didn't see the full journey going the way it did, honestly. Like the beginning and everything, when Bucky is like, or not Bucky, Falcon immediately like gives up the shield. I was like, yo, what are we doing here? Like, and I hadn't read any spoilers or anything. So I had no clue what was coming, which I'm very glad that we went on that ride with him. But for him to immediately give up the shield and feel not worthy, it felt like something Sam would do. But at the same time, Sam was just as big of a part of everything of saving the world, just like the rest of the Avengers were. And so for him to kind of feel inadequate at first and feel like he's not deserving the shield, I thought it was a very good take, because we've never seen anything with Sam like on an emotional level. Like we got a lot of them in Winter Soldier, but besides that, it's all been like getting beat up by Ant-Man, and then he'd show up in the movies and kind of spar back with Bucky and stuff. But besides that, we just never really had that exposure to him on a deeper level. So I really think that it was a cool thing that we got to see Sam shine in that way. Especially like and go on that journey with him, and starting with this episode. And then on the other side of it, with Bucky, I thought for sure they were going to be grooming Bucky to be the next Cap. So to see him dealing with therapy, and then finding out, of course, that he had befriended someone that the father of someone he actually killed when he was under the Winter Soldier program, was just crazy to me. And it was a hell of a start to the series, I thought, man. Like I was ready for more as soon as I finished it.
Yeah, same thing. I was also kind of taken aback by, because I figured my impression of the series going in, because we knew that John Walker was going to be in there and he was going to be the new Cap based on previews and everything. What I thought was going to happen though was that Sam was going to have the shield the whole time, and then like later on he'd eventually put on the suit. But I figured like at least in the beginning, that shield that they give John Walker, I thought that would have actually been like a replica shield or something, and Sam would have had like the real thing. So I was really kind of surprised to see like you said, like right at the start, he's given the shield away.
Right, and he trusted the government, which is crazy.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, let me just give this to you guys, and you guys will put it in the museum, right? Yes, we will, Sam. Absolutely. Yeah. Don't you worry.
But you did mention something in there that really stood out to me, and that's and I didn't really put those two things together, but you're right. We never really got a whole lot of Sam on an emotional, personal level. Like we get maybe a little bit of a hint of it in Winter Soldier when he's talking about his past, and we see him, counseling the veterans and stuff like that. But that was really about it. Like other than that, it's just, he's Cap's backup. He's Cap's partner. He's just here to kind of like, ride shotgun and make funny jokes with Bucky and have their whole rivalry thing going.
Yes.
But that was it. And to see, because I've seen Mackie in other things and he's a great actor. And it was really nice to see him really kind of like, get to flex those muscles in this role.
Yeah, because like you said, he's been in many movies. His filmography is huge, and he's always been a good actor to me. So seeing him come into the MCU was exciting because Winter Soldier was so good. But then, like you said, he was just always in the background. So getting to see him, especially like the scenes with his sister, I believe.
Yeah.
When like getting to see that he had a family and everything, and this there. I mean, even though he like it was the first episode, right, when they try to go to the bank and get a loan, and then And they're just like, yeah, we can't give you a loan. Like, and he's like, what are you talking about? I saved the world. They're like, thank you. But that's not how credit works. Especially because you disappeared for 5 years. So
Yeah.
And also like just a quick mention of it, even though it's a prevalent thing, especially in phase 4, the effects of the blip still being felt is really something that's being well done, because they could have easily just left it at the end of Endgame, but like everybody's back, the end. But we've seen it affect Far From Home. We've seen it affect WandaVision, and just all these different scenarios are still playing out. And like even it's mentioned in Eternals, I believe. It's always a constant thing, the blip, the blip, the blip. So it's nothing that they're just it's not like in the comic books where it's like this crazy thing happened, but guess what? They saved the world and it's over.
Right.
That's how comic books work. They're actually still long-term effects from the blip. Like Doctor Strange and even the Sorcerer Supreme, because he was gone for 5 years.
Yeah.
So that's something that's really cool. But so Sebastian Stan is bringing just as much to his role as Bucky as Mackie is, because with Bucky, of course, we saw him be redeemed, of course, once he went to Wakanda, and Shuri helped him with the brainwashing and getting over the programming. And then, of course, he blipped out too. And then next thing you know that he's back, then Cap's like, all right, I'll go take these stones. And then all of a sudden Cap's back and he's old. And like he never, I mean, obviously he got to say goodbye. We assume that Cap is still around at some point, old Cap. We just don't know if Chris Evans will ever come back to the role. He doesn't have to. He's done enough, I feel like.
Yeah.
But he just getting to see more of him trying to come to grips with what he's done, especially with his him taking a cue from Cap's book. With in Winter Soldier, you saw like Cap had a little notebook of things that he needed to catch up on. Like one of the example is Sam was like, "You need to listen to Marvin Gaye's Trouble Man," and so Cap's like, "Let me write that down," and he literally wrote it down. And so Bucky has taken a page from Cap, and now he's actually has this list of people that he's done wrong
in the same book, actually.
Yeah, and the exact same
literally
book.
The same book.
Yeah, so he's going and trying to redeem and try to find forgiveness in his own way, while still being Bucky and the former Winter Soldier. And it's not like he's not known. So it's very hard to make amends when you literally have blood in your register. Is that how
Ledger?
Black Widow said?
Ledger. Yeah.
Ledger. Yes, as a Widow would put it. So the setup of this was just brilliantly done, I thought.
Yeah. I thought that the relationship between Sam and Bucky is so good in this, because we gotten to see them, being kind of antagonistic towards each other and kind of like this fun way in Civil War. And then in Endgame, we kind of got a little hint that maybe there's some kind of mutual respect for each other, because there's that scene at the end when Cap goes away and like, it's just like this small thing, but he just says, he's like, "Hey, Sam," and it's just like this, not antagonistic or anything. And he's got this knowing smile on his face the entire time. And so like, cause he, and this, what I had suspected, and what this series, in the second half, latter half confirms, is that Cap had told Bucky about his plan and had talked about passing on the shield to Sam. So Bucky had known that, which kind of explains like the way he kind of smiled and he kind of like, nodded for Sam to go on and take the shield. And one of the nice things I like about what this series did is it doesn't erase that kind of newfound mutual respect they have for each other, but it also doesn't forget the kind of like animosity they had for each other either.
No, like they are the best of frenemies.
Yeah, exactly
how they are.
That's the best way to put it. Yeah. And we also get some other, one of the nice things here, nice surprises here, is we get Rhodey popping up.
Yes.
Although one of the weird things is like he got nominated for like an Emmy or something for just that one cameo, and nobody else in the show got anything.
Oh man, they must have been grasping at straws or something. They're like, "Hey, Don Cheadle hadn't been nominated for something in a while. Let's just throw the MCU a bone to get them to shut up about never getting nominated for anything."
Even he was surprised. Like, I don't know why they nominated me for that.
Especially when he wasn't going to win,
Yeah.
Definitely almost a pity nomination.
One thing you also mentioned there was Sam's sister in the bank scene, and one of the things I thought was really kind of funny about that scene is the whole thing of where we find out that the Avengers don't get paid, because that's a change from the comics, because at least at least pre-Bendis, because when Bendis came along, they'd already dissolved the old charter and everything. But the original Avengers charter, like all active members and reserve members, they get a salary.
Yeah, they were on Stark payroll.
Yeah, they got a Stark payroll. They were able to live in the mansion if they wanted to, and yeah, if you were a reserve member, then you got a slightly lower salary. But yeah, everybody got some sort of salary. So for him to just be like, he's like, yeah, Tony Stark didn't give us anything. I'm like, come on, Tony, what the fuck, man?
It feels like one of those things that he just never got to. Like honestly, let's think about it real quick, because Civil War happened. He opened up the new facility, and like things were kind of progressing pretty quick. So, and then of course he fell out with Cap, and they weren't talking for a long time, honestly, until Endgame when he showed back up on planet.
Yeah.
So it could have been something that was in the works. And then when the Sokovia Accords came out and everything, they're like, okay, we're going to all register. And then Cap's like, nah, I ain't registered nothing. So I'm sure at one point Tony's like, let's make this official, make sure everybody gets paid. And he just never got to it. And then the blip happened. And
yeah, I mean, come on, man. There was at least like a 4-year gap between the first Avengers movie and Civil War. You could have gotten something done.
Pepper should have figured it out.
Yeah.
But she probably was getting ready to work on it when she left them. So she wasn't around to do it either. Dang, Tony, always leaving behind something somebody else got clean up.
But another nice thing here is we get Batroc back, and I thought he was this really cool little part in Winter Soldier. And after that movie, I'm like, all right, that's it. We're never going to see Batroc again. And then he pops up here, and I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, Batroc is great. Always like he's definitely in Cap's rogues gallery from the comic books, but he was just always again one of those people that pop up like, oh look, it's Batroc month or 2 month. You know, he was never somebody that really felt like a real threat. He was just somebody that Cap fought every now and then. But he always had a cool back history. So seeing him come into the movies like we did, again, we thought maybe he'd be around longer, but he wasn't in the films. But he's utilized really well in this series too, I think. So I was happy to see Batroc as well.
Yeah. And you also talked about the blip. And I think this, at least up until now, I think no other show or movie has really dealt with the blip in as much of a focus as this series has so far.
Yeah, I mean, the plot kind of hinges on it a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it makes so much sense because, in some of the other stuff, it's just kind of this, okay, yeah, we got to mention this and get it out of the way. Like Far From Home kind of felt like that in a little bit. It's just like they got that little thing at the beginning, but then it's like, okay, let's move on then from the blip.
Right.
And Eternals too, like you said, it was just kind of like, a little mention here and that was about it. And WandaVision also a little bit of a mention, but it wasn't really the focus at all. This really dials in, and it's like the whole thing revolves around it. And I was not expecting this much emphasis on it, which is good too. It was one of the nice little surprises about this show.
Yeah, and the way that they built it up, and like I said, put it right in the plot, like the idea that there was 5 years where half the population on Earth was gone. So yeah, there was all these places where people used to live that was available to people who didn't have anything. And so for world leaders, honestly, to sit there and be like, oh, well, they're back and it was theirs before, so they get to take it back, is just a little crazy. Like I could honestly see this being a huge hot button topic if it was the real world.
Oh yeah.
Because how do you tell these people who pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and took advantage of this property that was available, especially for 5 years, and then tell them, oh, well, you got to move and you don't have anywhere to go now because the blip happened and they're all back, so they want their property back. Like it's a very catch-22 situation.
And it's very much playing up into those like kind of imperialist colonial themes that I think that the show is kind of dealing with on a subtler level, because this idea of like, hey, when we need you, we're gonna take advantage of all this help you're giving us, and then as soon as we don't need you anymore, well, you're on your own.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, I hate it. Like I felt I actually was really on the antagonist side on them this whole thing. Like I felt for their cause. Like, did they go a little far? Obviously, I mean, they had to in order to be as big of a threat as they were throughout the show. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, it's like there's kids that literally have nowhere to go now because because the government says they got to go. So it's really something that plucked the heartstrings. And that's not something that the show did very well throughout everything. Because, yeah, there was all the action and stuff. And like, yeah, man, it's so cool. Like, oh, my God, Zemo's awesome. But then there was some real issues being dealt with on the other side of the dial. So they covered their bases really well.
Yeah. The Flag Smashers had very legitimate complaints in here. And I didn't realize this because I thought maybe they created Carly Morgenthau for the show, but it turns out it's just the original Flag Smasher in the comics was Carl Morgenthau. So they just gender swapped him.
Yeah, which is fine with me.
Which I
didn't
thought
hear anybody complaining.
Yeah, that was a nice little twist.
Yeah,
and it was because I think in the comics the Flag Smasher was like his identity, and then Ultimatum was like his organization or something like that.
Right.
And in this, they just kind of like combine those two things and just make the organization the Flag Smashers, which I thought made a lot of sense, and it really worked for what they were doing, and it totally fit. Like the Flag Smashers are pretty much tailor made for this situation, so I thought it was a really good use of that.
Right. Because whenever you need that kind of organization who's going to cause havoc, but you don't want it to be on a global destruction level, the Flag Smashers are kind of perfect for that kind of thing. So yeah, I agree.
And then, well, let's talk about the new Cap now. John Walker comes in, Wyatt Russell, following his dad's footsteps into the MCU.
Yes. I'm going to say this right now. I loved most every moment that John Walker was Captain America. Because one, like, again, I didn't have a clue. Like I saw it like maybe obviously I saw that in episode 1 and I was like, yo, they're doing John Walker. So I was completely blindsided by that. But then I was a fan of US Agent from the comic books and also from fan fiction because one of my friends, Clayton Tooley, he used to write that for Marvel Anthology back in the day. And I fell in love with his version of John Walker. And to say that they nailed who John Walker Captain America was is an understatement because he's cocky. He has the work ethic. They didn't go the route of immediately powering him up. Eventually they did get there, but if there was anybody who was the right candidate to replace Cap, they kind of picked the right person, except the only difference is Cap wasn't a complete jerk. and John Walker definitely was. But at the same time, Walker had good intentions. It was just his ego would constantly get in the way. So I absolutely liked about 85% of the things he did on the show, up until obviously when he went a little nuts.
I thought he did it shows you what a great job he did. I'm watching the show and my wife is kind of like tuning in and out, and she is like, I miss Chris Evans. I'm like I don't like this guy, he's an asshole. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's kind of the point.
That's
he's
the point.
To be an asshole.
Right.
That shows you he's doing his job. But one of the things that I liked about, because with US Agent in the comics, there's a tendency to go too far with him being an asshole and just make him an unlikable prick.
It all depends on the writer.
Yeah, and I think this series did a really good job of taking you right up to that line, but not crossing over it. And I like
because he was honestly just trying to do the best he could, man. He really wanted to fill those shoes.
And I like they didn't go the jingoistic route, which is sometimes what they do in the comic books. They completely avoided that. And also I was really surprised that, Battlestar got so much play in this series.
Oh, I know. I mean, he was a vital part of the storyline too. I was real happy to see him. I enjoyed his rapport with John. I thought you could really tell that they were best friends, and it was nice to see their rapport in comparison to Cap and Bucky's rapport, especially like pre-Winter Soldier and after Winter Soldier. Like, it really shows that when you're in these military situations, and even in a fictional world, you go to war and you're only surrounded by literally the other people that go to war with. And there are literally lifelong bonds that you make with these other people. And you all hope to come home,
Mhm.
and not everybody does. But when you do, a lot of times it's just like picking up with your best friend no matter what. And because literally they were there with you when both of your bacon was in the fire, essentially. So I really did like to see how they came together, and how they dealt with one another. And it was cool to kind of see, especially once they got Battlestar and him going and stuff. Their synergy on the battlefield was kind of crazy. Like, they were nice with it.
Yeah.
And again, it just showed why, even though the government should never give Cap's shield away, why the government almost made the right choice to replace Cap.
And unless I'm mistaken, in the comics, Battlestar was kind of portrayed as kind of dim-witted, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And so I like that they didn't go that, and they made him kind of like the brains of the operation here.
Right. He was a more rational one because John was more reactionary.
Yeah.
So he was the one who was kind of like, all right, well, let's play it like this. And then John would listen to him at first. And then they would go from there. So I enjoyed that as well.
Yeah. And yeah, he was a really good addition. I was not expecting to get as much of him in the series. And one of the things that surprised me too is they created a wife for Walker in this, but she doesn't really have any purpose in the series other than just being there.
Yeah. I thought that was interesting, but I think that might have been, I think it was more like they felt like it was needed to try to add to make him more likable. It's like, oh, well, he has a wife and everything. There are stakes for him involved, versus just making him this suddenly single Captain America, who he literally was everywhere. Like he was on Good Morning America. He was like billboards everywhere. Like it was literally like it was everything that that celebrities in America are today, where they're constantly everywhere. It was like Cap, and it was like all anybody was talking about. So I think they did that in an effort to humanize them and kind of put more emphasis on the man behind the new Cap. I don't necessarily feel like it was needed, though. So I kind of see what they were going for, though.
I mean, I think because this series, I think probably more than any other, it really suffered because of the pandemic, because they had to shut down production in the middle of it, and because this was originally supposed to come out before Black Widow, I believe, or Black Widow was supposed to come out before this. I think it was Black Widow was supposed to be March of 2020, and then I think this was supposed to follow because WandaVision kind of came out on time, I believe. I think it was supposed to be like late 2020 into early 2021 was the projected time for WandaVision. So I think that was mostly still on time despite the pandemic. But I believe you're correct. Widow was supposed to come out first, and then we were supposed to jump right to Cap. So or Falcon Winter Soldier, sorry. So I'm guessing that they may have changed up the stinger credits on Black Widow base, because obviously they introduced drawing a blank, Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character in this series first. And we'll talk about her more in the next episode, because I got a lot to say about her. But yeah, and also like the episodes had kind of changed, the storyline even changed, because originally they were supposed to the Flag Smashers were really supposed to try and release a bioweapon. That was like their plot. And then because of the pandemic, they were just kind of like, maybe we shouldn't use a biological weapon here.
Maybe that's a little insensitive.
Yeah. So they changed a lot of stuff around. And I think, there may have been some stuff with with John's wife getting kind of like, pushed to the wayside as a result of this.
Yeah, she might have had a more meaty role before they had to change things. That makes sense.
Yeah. But I think the big star of at least these first 3 episodes, though, basically really the 3rd episode is really where, because he's just appears at the end in the 2nd episode, is Baron Zemo coming back.
Yes.
And I was so looking forward to see, because we talked about this when we talked about Civil War, is that up until Thanos, Zemo was my second favorite villain in the MCU. I thought he was like the, more, or actually I should say up until Killmonger, but like up until that point, he was just like second only to Loki, because he had like such good motivation. It was the first time in the MCU when the villain actually won, because he'd gotten everything he wanted. Basically,
he really did. Zemo, I didn't think we were going to see Zemo in this series. So when Barnes and Wilson decide we're going to go see Zemo, I was like, yo, wait a minute, they're going to go see him. That's crazy. But out of all the major villains in MCU leading up to essentially leading up to Civil War, most of them were it was like Loki obviously was a brother of Thor. Iron Man was Ironmonger, and then it became Avalanche. Am I using Whiplash?
No, Whiplash. Yeah.
Whiplash. And then in Cap's movies, it was Red Skull, and then Civil War was Winter Soldier, essentially shield against Cap. was really what it was. So it was all things that had been triggered by obviously the superheroes, and the superheroes also triggered Zemo, but as we learned in the beginning of the movie, it was due to the collateral damage from Ultron. Ultron's another one. There you go. Of course, Tony and Bruce made Ultron. So it was always a cause and effect thing. Now there was cause and effect in Civil War, but again, it was cause of collateral damage. Sokovia happened, his family died, and literally he, as we find out in this series, he's way more. There's way more to him than what we saw in Civil War. But he literally found his way to get the Winter Soldier codes, break into the Winter Soldier's containment unit, turn him back into the Winter Soldier, and he just kept sitting all these. He was always just one step ahead of the heroes until T'Challa caught up with him at the end of Civil War. So I really liked him as well, and he literally fractured Tony and Cap, which who would have thought that even thinkable until Tony realized that Cap knew that Bucky had killed his parents. So, and I still won't forget that reveal. So I also just love Zemo, and I love the way they use him in this entire series.
Yeah, and they take him to the next level. Like I did not expect, because I figured, oh, he's just going to be Zemo here. There's not going to be any Baron Zemo. But then they walk out and they walk into the garage. He's like, oh, I'm a Baron. And I'm like, well, they made him Baron Zemo. I love that.
Yes, they gave him his royal lineage. Absolutely.
And they gave him the sock mask too, the purple mask. I love that.
He got the mask on, and he was holding his own, man. Like it wasn't no kind of situation where like it was ever Zemo's in trouble. No, Zemo could have went toe to toe with Cap if he had to, man. I would like, maybe we still will in the future. I would like to see them actually square up and see a fight in MCU between the two of them, because it'll be really good, I think. Also, they did a really good job of incorporating not only the mask, but other elements of his costume. Like even like the coat he's wearing, it's got the fur collar with the little polka dots, just like in the comics he wears. I love that. And he's so funny because he didn't get to be funny in Civil War. He was always so serious, like, oh, you ruined my life. And now he's like, yeah, you ruined my life, but I can also be fun. And he's a welcome comic relief throughout all of it. And he never looks, I mean, he has his moments where he looks out for other people, but he never stops putting Baron Zemo as priority number one, even when we think he's not. And I just love it. I'm here for it.
Yeah. I loved how, and like you said, he provides this comic relief, but it never does it at the expense of making him like a goofy character or a slapstick character. Like it's not like a Justin Hammer situation.
No, he's cool, funny. Like Tony.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like it just like, and he says things that he's making sense. And even I love my favorite line I think from this is when taking it back to what you mentioned about Trouble Man, when when Bucky takes out the little book and Sam's like, hey, yeah, Steve had that book. I told him about Marvin Gaye and he wrote it down in there. He's like, do you like Marvin Gaye? He's like, it's not really my thing. And he's like, well, you've got to listen to it. And then Zemo, he's like Trouble Man. It perfectly captures the African-American experience. And Sam just like, he's like, well, look, he shouldn't be saying that shit, but he's right.
He's right. He's right. Like he's not allowed to say that, but he's right. Yeah. Yes. Oh man, I love that scene. It's just the little things. And just like the dancing, right? Yes, dancing in the club, man. Like Marvel literally put on their YouTube channel. I think it's still up. Of just, it's like they did like an hour-long cut of him just doing the little bop in the club. Yes. Oh man, I want to be Baron Zemo when I grow up. I think I finally figured it out.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing they brought in that third episode, which is probably like the first biggest X-Men connection we've gotten in the MCU, is they go to Madripoor. And as soon as they said Madripoor, I'm like, yes, it's happening.
I know that they're good. They're going to draw X-Men as long as they can. And I don't know if you've seen the Doctor Strange trailer, but
I saw that.
Yeah. So I think we're close to entering that world. Obviously it's the multiverse world, but still we're very close to it. But hearing anything X-Men in the MCU is just so cool because again, it's just something we've been chomping at the bit for. So even to get like a city that we know is well known throughout the mutant universe.
Yeah, and this second watch around, I noticed they had the Princess Bar there in the background. I didn't notice that before.
Yeah, I think I missed that the first time too. So that's definitely in there. And again, the MCU was just so good at planting the seeds so that when they're ready for the seeds to grow and pop up, it's like, oh yeah, and like that's just another thing that they've always stayed good at. So I'm glad that they are continuing that tradition.
One of the things I think that they're doing is, and this has been, and I talked to some people who know people who worked on some of this stuff, and they don't have things all planned out like a lot of people think. They're kind of winging it in a way, but they kind of do that thing that Claremont used to do when he was writing the X-Men, where he'll drop these little nuggets in, and then when he doesn't know what to do for a story, he goes back and he's like, oh, that's right, I planned it this year, so now I can write a story about that.
Right, and that's just smart. That's smart writing.
It works in a way where it makes you think that everything's been planned out when really it's not. But it's led to some really nice little kind of surprises, like in Iron Man 2, for example, when they had the little kid, and then it's like later on they're like, oh, that was Peter Parker,
right?
Or Shang-Chi's father, right, and the Mandarin and all that kind of stuff, and where they planted that in at the end of in the All Hail the King, and then that there's a real Mandarin out there, and then everyone's like, okay, we're never going to see him, and then boom, here comes Tony Leung, and he's Shang-Chi's father,
and he's awesome. He's awesome. Yeah. And that's okay that it's not all planned out, but like you said, as long as they know they have those to fall back on sometimes, and they can build on them, it's always a nice little emergency exit in case they have to use it for something.
Yeah, and I think that's, and it as a writer, and I think you'll probably relate to this too, but it makes me feel a little bit better about myself, because there's lots of times when you're writing stuff and you're just kind of like, yeah, I know I should be planning this stuff out, but I'm just gonna write it and see where it goes. And then you kind of feel like you get that little imposter syndrome going on, and then because then you read interviews with quote unquote real writers, and they're like, oh yeah, I had it all planned out, and I took, and then you really ask them, they're like, no man, I didn't really have it planned out.
I mean, Derek was the same way, because Derek, when he got in the mode, Derek would just write, and so there would be things that I would mention to him, or that somebody else would mention to him about something he wrote. He'd like, I put that in there. and he'd always be like, yeah, I did put that in there. That's exactly what I wanted to do. And then obviously he didn't. But I mean, then he was probably just made a little note. He's like, I put this in the last train to Kushara, so I can, so it is something that writers naturally do, and the good ones are able to pick back up on it and reuse it later. Versus people who just leave plots hanging all over the place, like Howard Mackey.
Yeah.
Who thought we were going to get a Howard Mackey reference on this episode?
I was not expecting
on their
that,
bingo card.
Yeah. And then also we get at the very end of the last episode we're going to talk about here, we get the Dora Milaje pop up. Like, I was not expecting anything from Wakanda to pop up in here.
I'm glad they went there, man, because obviously Wakanda is responsible for Bucky getting better. He's their white wolf. I really feel like there is a lot of and we saw a little bit of it here. I think there's a lot of respect and love and admiration between the people of Wakanda and T'Challa and Bucky, especially because they literally saved his life. So I'm glad that that they made that connection, and then also that Shuri was smart enough to make his arm to be able to shut down his arm. He's like, and then he's like, We're always, I don't know what she said. I can't remember, but it was pretty much along the lines of we prepare for everything. So especially when you're a assassin turned back to normal, air quotes. So
so
it's nice
that's
to have a
actually
thank
the next part. So before let's table that discussion. And
Yeah.
the last thing we got to talk about, which we haven't talked about yet, is Isaiah Bradley and bringing in
Yeah.
the stuff from the truth.
I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. I'm just going to jump in here real quick. I read The Truth years ago, and I was floored that Marvel would even have, I mean, because that was 2001 when all that came out.
Yeah.
So I was floored that Marvel even had, and I mean, it was 2001, and Marvel's always been kind of progressive, but Marvel literally said, oh, by the way, they took all these black guys and experimented on them and tried to, give them super soldier formula and make them superheroes. And then this guy came the closest, but we just never utilized them. And then we tortured them for years. It just blew my mind. And then for them to bring that into the MCU and have Sam discover that there was a black Captain America, which he had no idea, obviously. I think this is obviously where the seeds are sown for his regrets about giving up the shield, because obviously, as we are going to talk about later, one of the things he says is America will never accept a black man as Captain America. So to find out that America went to that well, but then America also was America and didn't actually pull the trigger on utilizing Isaiah Bradley properly, and then essentially just being horrible to him for 30 years. It really, I think I cried twice in this series, and this was it. And then when later on, when Sam takes over and his first time he's on screen, it was kind of like, it felt like a moment. It felt like a Black Panther moment where it was like, yo, this is super dope. But yeah, just hearing Isaiah Bradley go over everything that they did to him, and then his reluctance to talk to Sam, and him essentially telling Sam that they're like, they'll never respect you and they'll never love you, and you'll never be able to fill his shoes. And and even as a hero, he was saying like, it's not worth it. They don't care about you, and they never will. It really hit home. Obviously, I'm not a superhero, but it's something that I deal with every day. Just being Black, in case you're not watching the video. He did say Black nerd earlier. Yeah. But these are things we think about and that aren't normally touched upon or worried about by white people, so to speak. So I really like that they were willing to go that in depth and mine the truth, because Marvel really hadn't talked a lot about it, because if you remember, like when Quesada and Bill Jemas was in charge, and they put out like all these controversial series, like of course, like you remember that Marvel series where it was like Aunt May as a young girl.
Trouble. Yeah,
Trouble. And then this came out, so they were like putting out this edgy content, and then when there was any kind of pushback on it, they're like, oh yeah, we're just trying it out, don't, and then they kind of distance themselves. So for them to go back and make that into the MCU and literally put into the MCU, I really thought was a very cool thing to do.
Yeah, and I think it shows the strength of the Truth miniseries compared to some of those other things, because Trouble, that was just
weird.
Mark Millar was drunk or something, and he was just like,
Mark
like, why don't we do this?
Drunk.
Yeah. He's always like, if he's not literally drunk, he's at least like mentally drunk or something.
I just found out the other day, Perry, that he took over Ultimate X-Men when he started Ultimate X-Men, and he didn't know nothing about the X-Men.
That makes total sense.
And I was just like, no wonder it was so weird, because it's like Bendis had some Spider background, and he just kind of introduced the elements in his own way and stuff. But that first X-Men run was just so crazy, and I was like, why would they do that? But at the same time, they were just all about trying to sell books.
So I do remember I had gone back. I remember back when it was coming out. Like, I loved it, being a teenager at the time, and then rereading it later, and you're just like,
it seemed like some bad fan fiction.
Yeah. And it was just like, I remember one review I had read way back in the day after the I think it was after the sixth issue, and the reviewer has said, like, I'm tired of this adolescent exercise in dick waving. And I'm like, if there's ever been a quote that perfectly sums up Miller's work, I think that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the killer thing, though, and we'll get back to Falcon and Winter Soldier in a minute, but I do want to get this out, is like the killer thing, though, is that he can be a good writer when he tries.
Yeah.
Like, Red Sun was amazing.
Oh, Red Sun was great.
Yeah. And
Red Sun is a great one. And then Kick-Ass, I really liked the first Kick-Ass. I thought that was really cool. I hated Wanted personally, but when he shines, it was so stupid at the end. Like, you're an idiot for reading this book. Like, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Thanks, Mark.
Enjoy the castle that we helped fund.
Yeah, pretty much. So when he's on, but when he's just throwing things at a wall, like even he wrote Wolverine Enemy of the State, right?
Yeah.
And Wolverine Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, even that stuff.
Well, also like Old Man Logan, right? Like there's like half of that is amazing, and then you've got redneck Hulks fucking each other, and I'm like, what the
yeah, I was gonna say incestuous.
Yeah.
Redneck Hulks. Don't leave that part out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mark Millar has a drinking problem.
You heard it here, folks.
There you go.
Send any hate mail to Kelen Conley.
Yeah, B-Hyphen BHYPHEN at gmail.com. There you go.
But yeah, and I think that one of the things that, going back to what I was saying about the truth, is that, when it was announced, along with the midst of all this other stuff, like Trouble and all this other stuff, is like, you look at it and you think, they're just trying to be controversial, but then you read the truth. You sit down and you read it, and it's an amazing book. Like it is, it's so good. It's so well done. And I think that's
I need
why
to revisit it.
Yeah. And I think that's why it stood the test of time. They recently released a collection of it because it had been.
Oh, did they?
It had been, yeah, the collection had been out of print for a while. And I think it was like maybe last year they had a Black History Month sale where they had all the individual issues for free.
Oh, nice.
But now they've released a new trade I saw the other day on Comics.
Okay. So, I might have to check that out.
Yeah.
Because literally I have not read it since it came out, I don't think, but it impacted me then. Yeah. And I'm sure it'll have a same impact on me now.
But it's something too that they've gone back and they've revisited since, right? Mm-hmm. And like one of my favorite instances when Christopher Priest was doing The Crew and he introduced Isaiah's son, Josiah X. Right. And basically, Malcolm X in the Marvel Universe, who becomes Captain America, or he should have become Captain America.
Should have been Captain America. Yeah.
And that was a character that I wish we had gotten to see again, because he hasn't popped up since that series. But then we also got, Eli Bradley in the Young Avengers, Patriot. So, they've kept that legacy alive in the comics, at least, which, and I think that's a testament to how powerful that original series was. And to bring in Carl Lumley to play Isaiah in this was just brilliant.
Perfect casting.
Because, Carl Lumley, for a lot of people, is the first Black superhero in media. Because you had, I know you had Robert Townsend before him, and the guy who played Abar, but one that most people I think remember is Carl Lumley as the Mantis.
Yes, yeah, and I loved the Mantis as a kid, man. That show was incredible. That show was incredible. So to see him come full circle and get to play this role. Like who would have thought when he was doing a Fox TV show that years later he would get to be the Black Captain America, the first Black Captain America in the MCU. So that was a very cool nod that they decided to go that route in casting.
Yeah. And they had that element of tragedy because if you remember in The Truth, like his mind had been kind of degraded from all the experiments they had done on him. And in this one, and I think they kind of combined elements of Josiah's story with Isaiah and to make he's almost like a composite character in that way because he's very much with it. But they added that element of tragedy because in the comic books, his wife is still alive and she's taking care of him. Yeah. But here they have the aspect his wife is dead and she died while he was in prison. They never let him read any of the letters she sent and all that. And that adds
they did him so dirty.
It adds a whole different element of tragedy to his story because at least in the comics, he's not really fully aware of what had happened to him. This guy knows everything that happened to him.
Yeah, and that just makes his story even more tragic. Because I know that we have a way of blocking things out, but literally he says that he remembers everything. So I can't imagine having to wake up every day and the kind of nightmares or even the daymares that he might have to experience just from the traumas he's seen.
Yeah.
So it really did bring a lot of weight to his character and a real sharp jolt of reality to Sam. Not to say that Sam wasn't grounded enough, but I kind of feel like it was just something aside that if they were going to go the route that they're going to make Sam Cap, they did need to really bring the Black experience to the table and not just be like, here, Sam, here you go. And Sam be like, thanks, I'm gonna be the best Cap ever. And then end credits. Like he has to weigh both sides of the coin. And I think that's important just to his character and a testament to my brain sucks. A testament to Anthony Mackie's acting ability. Yes.
Yeah. And also tying into that too, like when they leave Isaiah's house and the cops try and stop them, like that was just like, I'm just like, oh, and the heel turn as soon as they realize who he is. And I'm just like, I'm like, that's just, it kills you. And it's just like, you know what? Yeah, you're all apologies now because you know he's a superhero who can kick your ass. But you know, it's just like up until that point. And I imagine it's probably the same thing with, you know, Black guys who are athletes or celebrities or something like that. Like they get pulled over and it's like, hey, that's the guy. Like, oh shit, I'm so sorry, Mr. You know, so and so. And it's the exact same thing, I imagine.
Yeah, mostly I would think it would happen more with athletes because with celebrities, I feel like a cop would be like, oh, I'm about to take down Snoop Dogg. I'm definitely going to make this arrest. And not that anybody should be arresting Snoop's old ass. But I mean, yeah, it literally happens all the time where someone's racially profiled and the police go after a Black guy and then they're like, oh, and then they start running stuff and they're like, oh, we didn't realize you were the sixth man off the next bench. Sorry about that. And then we'll just send you on the way. And it's like, yeah, but you kind of made me get on the ground and everything. You cuffed me before you took my ID and ran it. And so it was very, again, grounded in reality. And again, that was another way to drive home the point to Sam that even if you're Captain America, you think somebody's like, oh, pull him over and be like, oh crap, you're Captain America. Just awful.
Well, it's also an echo of what happened at the bank, right? When the guy's like, "You're Falcon," and he's like, oh, "High five," and he's like, you know, can I get a selfie with you? And then he's just like, really, you want to get a selfie with me after you just denied me alone? I just like,
oh man, it's a cruel place.
Yeah, and and those little moments are. I like the series doesn't make them the focus, but it kind of does in another way, right? It all kind of builds up to these larger themes they're talking about. I thought it did a really good job with those things.
Yeah. Because again, in order for them to really sell Sam as Cap, you have to look at all sides of it. And you can't just give Sam the shield because the fanboy like, oh, well, we don't want Sam to be Cap, and we didn't like it when he was a Cap in the comic books. Blah blah blah. We don't like that. To kind of have Sam truly go on a journey and really, really work to earn to be Cap, because we're going to talk about it here on next episode. But the shield scenes later where he's just training, phenomenal. And it, again, grounded in reality that you can't just pick up Cap's shield and sling it and it comes back to you. No, you've got to train with that MFer, man.
Yeah. Especially because he doesn't have any super soldier serum in him.
Exactly.
Yeah, just like the first 3 episodes, I think are just, you know, solid all the way through. I think in the latter half that the series stumbles a little bit, and that's when you really feel the pandemic effects and the rewrites coming in.
Yes.
But the first 3 episodes, totally solid. And just like the stuff with Isaiah, the stuff with Zemo, all of it just works together perfect. And the action, like, you know, it's basically, you know, looking at the trailers, everyone was saying like, oh, it's, you know, Falcon and Bucky, they're the Riggs and Murtaugh of the Marvel universe. It's like
Lethal Weapon MCU.
Yeah. And I'm like, and I'm fine with that. I have no problem with that. I love it.
Yeah. The first 3 episodes do so much world building in such a short amount of time. And we really haven't even touched on Bucky that much because it's been so Sam focused so far. But Bucky goes on his own journey as well, and both characters come out better than they were at the beginning of it. So I think that's something that was super important going into this as well, because people and even friends of mine are skeptical about the MCU Disney Plus shows because they're like, oh, I don't want to watch 10 episodes of Winter Soldier and Falcon. I don't want to do that. I just want to watch a 2.5 hour movie. Like that's cool, but at the same time, you have to realize that you're getting just as much story from the TV series as you are from a movie, and it's broken up. So yeah, it sucks waiting week to week when you're watching it live. But it's still the same MCU tried and true storytelling method.
And it's allowing them to really dive deeper into those characters. Like we were talking about, we didn't really see that much. It's funny when you look back at it in retrospect, because when you were saying that, that hadn't clicked with me, because I'm just like, oh yeah, that's right. We didn't really get a whole lot of Sam in the movies, and we kind of take it for granted after we see this show. It's like, oh yeah, and because we also got the impressions of him from the comics too, so we kind of build this character in our mind, and we kind of think that he's had more screen time than he actually has had. And I think the same is true with Wanda and Vision. Like we got,
oh yeah,
I mean, because
we thought we knew everything about Wanda and Vision before WandaVision. Like I was like, oh yeah, she's Quicksilver's brother, and he died in Age of Ultron, and then she lost her accent, and she fell in love with Vision, and they ran away, and there was just so much more to explore. And we're not talking about WandaVision clearly, but they did a wonderful job exploring both of those characters. Again, especially at the end with the pandemic, whereas like, especially it was early pandemic, so they're literally like, all right, we're only gonna put 2 of you together. Try to make magic. So I'm appreciative of the TV series personally.
Same
and
here.
yeah, it's more watching, I guess, but you would just go sit there and watch Winter Soldier again anyway. So why not watch Falcon and Winter Soldier?
It does drive me crazy when I see people on Twitter saying like, oh, there's too much superhero stuff. And I'm like motherfucker, do you know what it was like for us when we were kids? I mean, we would have pushed our grandma down a flight of stairs to get this much content back then.
Do you remember the 2000s, Perry? Yeah. Like there was so like everybody's like, oh, let's do a superhero movie. Here's Ghost Rider. Or like, okay, like, oh, here's The Watchmen, which I haven't watched in years, but I did like The Watchmen when I first saw it.
You go way back to one of our early episodes. We talked about that, and I tore into that movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to do.
Yeah,
very easy to do. But there was way more misses than there were hits. There was 2003 Hulk, which people love, some people hate it.
Go back earlier, right? Remember like the mid 90s when we had Nick Fury and Generation X,
or almost had Roger Corman Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
We've come a long way.
Or we had Van on talking about Infinity War in the last episode, and he was talking about how he's like, back before the MCU, we had like, this really bad Thor and Hulk TV movie. Right,
yeah, man.
And it's just like, and when I see people complaining about there's too much, I'm like, just like, motherfucker, just shut up. So those are the 2 big takeaways. Mark Millard's drunk, and just shut up.
Shut up. Enjoy the MCU and shut up. Yeah.
All right. But I think
DC.
I think that wraps up the first 3 episodes.
We talked about Madripoor. Sharon Carter showed up. We're going to talk about her.
We'll talk about her more in the next episode.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of going with her. And some interesting turns they took with her character.
Yeah.
Okay, Kel, you want to tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at B-Hyphen, BHYPHEN. All of anything I'm working on, always post on there. I have a Linktree link in there, and it has like my YouTube channel videos I'm working on, or any podcast I'm doing. I have 2 podcasts. I have a wrestling one called Wrestlecast Power Hour, and then my own podcast, Hyphen Nation. That comes out when I find time during the week. But there's like hundreds of episodes for you to listen to. So you can go check that out, or you can just go to hyphenuniverse.com, and all the links are conveniently placed on the front page.
Okay, great. And as for my stuff, I've got you're listening to this now. I've got a science fiction serial. So if you're a Kindle Vella reader, I got that out now. It's called Corsairs. You can find out all other information about my writing at percivalconstantine.com. And for this show, superherocinephiles.com, Super Cinema Pod on Twitter and Instagram, Superhero Cinephiles on Facebook. Like us, review us on Apple Podcasts, anywhere you get your shows. And
yep. And do 5 stars. Even if you hate the show, give them 5 stars.
Do it anyway.
And on Spotify, you can do the 5 stars too if you haven't abandoned it because of Joe Rogan. So that's your choice.
All right.
He's trash.
Yeah, he is,
I'm going to throw that out there. I still use Spotify, but he's trash.
Another hot take.
Yes.
All right. Mark Miller's drunk and Joe Rogan is trash.
Thought
Fully
this was a
endorsed by
superhero
the show. Yeah. All right. That does it for us. And come back to the next episode where we're going to be talking about the latter half of Falcon and Winter Soldier. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. You have been listening to the Superhero Cinephiles podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Super Cinema Pod. Join our Facebook group by searching for Superhero Cinephiles, where you can interact with us and other superhero fans. If you'd like to support the show, you can become a regular supporter at Patreon or make a one-time donation through PayPal, both of which can be found at our website, superherocinephiles.com. If you buy or rent any movies through the Amazon links at our site, it helps support the show. Please be sure to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thank you for listening. And as always, good night, good evening. God bless.